Hi, I'm Danielle Hartman. Welcome to Poured in PA, a series sharing the stories of Pennsylvania's craft beer industry. Brewers come from all different backgrounds. Our guest is one of the few to come from the action sports world. Before brewing, Matt Lindenmuth was best known for being the first athlete to do a double backflip on a vert ramp. He's since traded in those skates for stainless steel tanks.
Well, so the very first time I had alcohol, it was Margaritas in Barcelona at the old Olympic Park. You know, I was always with guys older than me. Like, I was the young dude in the lineup. And so they started handing me margaritas, and I remember, like, these things are freaking amazing. These are so good. And I, like, chugged 3 of them and instantly was drunk. And I was, like, wandered off because I've never experienced this feeling before. I, like, wandered off into Barcelona, couldn't speak Spanish, couldn't find my hotel, whatever. I found it eventually. I'm safe. I'm safe, Mom. Don't worry. I grew up in just an active family. My parents were extremely active and athletic, and they were always looking for new things to do. And we literally, as a family, went and got rollerblades together, and I kept on doing it every day. That was just what I did. And I was, 11, 12 years old, and really found a love for the skate park and the culture, this kind of counterculture that existed in the early 90s around the skate park scene and the music that came around with that. And just, I was into it all. Like, I'd surf when I was at a coastline. I would, mountain bike, and I'd snowboard. But those were all hobbies. They were just, things that I was just doing. Same with rollerblading was for me. It was just a hobby. I was just going to the skate park, and that was my thing to do after school and on the weekends. Fast forward to, it was September of 94. I was 13. I went to New York for a competition. It was the first competition I ever competed in. Took 3rd place in that. And a couple ladies from a wheel company approached my mom and I, said, hey, we would like your son to endorse our company. And a week later, I was on a plane to Vegas by myself as a 13-year-old. Somebody started giving me money to do it. And so it was like, okay, I'll do that more than all these other hobbies. And then it became a job, obviously, and it kept on growing from there. And 1995, X Games came to be, and then this was like a television thing, and it wasn't just punk kids at a skate park, and we were on TV, and the whole storyline changed. Eventually, all that traveling, led me to discovering craft beer. It wasn't even craft beer, I guess, at that time. It was just beer. But I was doing tons of time in Europe. I'd spent a lot of time in Germany, a lot of time in Switzerland, France, Belgium, numerous trips a year. And so I was like 14 years old and getting handed beers at dinner, and it was not frowned upon. So, like, after that first experience with margaritas in Barcelona, I'm like, okay, I learned my lesson here. Like, I'm going to try sipping on some beers and stuff. And they were good. I just didn't know anything else. Like, they were giving me, whatever was the local brewery at whatever town we were in. And I didn't really understand until I was home drinking at, like, underage parties in high school, the little bit of time I went to high school, that was really good beer that we were drinking over there. Long story short, I put 2 and 2 together eventually, and started to realize, like, wow, like, there's something special in those beers that I was drinking when I was overseas. And I, at the same time, started seeing, like, the sparks of that, like, mid to late 90s revolution happening here, where I'm like, ooh, but I can't drink it here. It wasn't until later that I started to research and get into it. Transitioning into homebrewing was just a bit of, like, curiosity for me. I was already into craft beer. I was just pursuing, anytime I was traveling, like, ooh, let's go check out this brew pub or whatever. But then when I was snowboarding full-time, skating kind of took a back seat. I was living in Mammoth Lakes, California, and at the time, I had to drive to Reno like a couple times a week to fly in and out. So I would drive up to Reno, and then out of Reno, Tahoe area, there was a bunch of other guys living in that neck of the woods, involved in the action sports industry, and they were already homebrewing. These guys were already doing their thing, and I would go crash for a night or two as I flew in and out and started tasting their beers. Curiosity kept growing. They took me to the shop. I got my own kit set up. I started joining the club sort of thing and sharing beers amongst all of us, and it was sort of just how the action sports career started for me. I had no idea that I was going to end up doing that as something that was a profession. It was just something that we did to entertain our time. And then obviously when the action sports career had to come to an end, I went through a series of injuries, and we all evidently get older, I guess. I don't know. Somebody kept telling me about it when I was younger. I didn't believe them. And so yeah, I was like, time to find what else am I going to do for the rest of my life. After a couple other failed attempts to find something I was happy with, I realized I'm really into this craft beer scene. Then I just dove headfirst, full sailor dive into opening Saucony back in 2012. The easy answer to how I decided that I was going to open a brewery was literally reading Brewing Up a Business from Sam Calagione. I read it a couple times. I was sort of like fascinated with the dogfish experience because I grew up vacationing down there with my family and watched dogfish come and grow, and I just thought they were super cool. After reading that book, I like I said, I had to go through it a couple times over. I'm like, I can do that. You know, it was a total naive home brewer to, I can be a professional brewer. Luckily, I did spend a little bit of time doing some short course work and volunteering my time at other commercial breweries. But that didn't alleviate the fact that I was about to walk into a million more mistakes that I was about to make. I was really, really digging for something to be passionate about again, because I spent this 18-year stretch of my life being 100% just immersed in the action sports world, and that, in the snap of a finger, it's just over. So I was really, really hunting for something to be passionate about, and this was that sense of camaraderie, culture that made me comfortable, and I went for it. I chose to open the first venture in my little hometown of Kutztown, Pennsylvania. And I thought, this is going to be great. I'm going to be welcomed with huge open arms, open another brewery in town. And it was not what I expected. It was my hometown. I love Kutztown. I grew up there. I still spend time there. So I just wanted to kind of have my spot on home turf. And I went through all the motions. I went and started taking some short course work at Cornell, had a brewing technology course going on, started going around and meeting guys and trying to lend my time, try to get as much info as I could. I was reading more books than I ever was willing to read when I was in school, because again, I just needed that passion project again. But I did a lot of that groundwork of doing the licenses myself, and working with a couple local attorneys to get everything dialed in with the local municipality, and it was a total shot in the dark. I had a vision, I knew what I was interested in, but it was a gamble. It was strictly just a 15-barrel brew house, distribution, and at that time, you couldn't even have a tap room without having a restaurant, and we didn't have the money for that, so we literally were just a brewery that was sending beer out to distribution, and if people stopped by, I would sell them 6-packs, and that was the way we got going. And then luckily about a year or two later, they changed the tap room rule, and it's been a few years now that I have not been involved at the day-to-day operations there. And my spin-off project of the Larimer ushered in the change of pace of me not being around up there that much. The Larimer came to be because I was spending a ton of time in the mountains. I was hanging out in Colorado, and after a little bit of time of being out there and kind of plugging myself in the brewing industry out there, I ran into, via other brewing friends, Brian Strumke in Stillwater, and he was in and out of town on a regular basis. At that time, he was doing a bunch of contract brewing in Denver, and we got to talking. He kind of introduced me, got me lined in with these guys to potentially contract brew out of this facility as well. I'm like, this is great. I can get back to what I really wanted to do in the first place, which was brew, and not just be a business operator. So I was working on a concept. I was trying to figure it out. I mean, basically, probably a week or two before this logo was presented to me, I was ready to go on a full theme of like a bicycle theme brewery. I was riding my road bike and mountain biking a ton in Colorado, and I was like, I'm friends with a bunch of guys at this bike shop, and we're gonna do this. And then this story got dropped in my lap, and a guy that I'd known for a few years with a marketing group out there, he's like, here's this logo, you know who that is? I have no clue. I have no clue who that is. He's like, well, he's a Pennsylvania native who founded Denver, and Larimer Street and Larimer Square and all these places, they're named after this guy. He's like, I know you've been looking for a concept for this new brewery project. You know, if you want this, it's yours or whatever. I had to pay him for it, but it's yours. So I did. I was like, this is brilliant. I love this. I dug into the history of this guy, and I'm like, this is amazing. Like, I'm a Pennsylvania native, currently launching this thing out of Colorado. I love the connection, and I love the art and the graphic, and I'm like, we ran with it. I mean, it was supposed to be a proper side project. Gypsy Nomad Brewing, a couple batches like here or there. It wasn't supposed to turn into anything crazy, and then Colorado received it well, and I was like brewing all the time, and distributor got involved, and then started to sort of hunt for the path to getting back to Pennsylvania and connecting that story of PA Colorado, and we ended up finding this spot across from the Union Soccer Stadium. Been fans of the team, love what's happening down here, and now we have a home. We're no longer gypsies, and I get to brew on a little 3-barrel brew house all the time, so I'm in heaven. We actually developed the logo prior to knowing we were going to be here, next door to the Union. But we definitely emphasized the fact that we had similar color arrangements and the shield and things like that. I mean, our taproom life kind of revolves around soccer. We're trying to get a little bit more dialed in with regular weekly can releases so that we don't fully focus on soccer. Like, that's not all of our life, is not all about soccer. But yeah, I mean, we chose to be here because of the stadium, and we're a couple hundred yards from the riverfront and the Commodore Barry Bridge. There's beautiful river scenery right out here. I was just always impressed with it. I thought it was a great thing, and then tying in soccer to the whole picture, which originally soccer was never a part of our thing as a brand, but it sort of melded pretty nicely without any effort.
Come on, Mark! On your right.
General Larimer has become our mascot, 100%. My buddy Steven Leibensberger, he does all the art, different labels and stuff. We've had a blast dressing him up, putting him in Eagles jerseys and Sixers jerseys and whatever. Everybody gets bummed on me for the 99 Problems label because he's got a Yankees hat on. I'm like, Jay-Z wears a Yankees hat. That's the only one. I'm just going to say it now. That's why he doesn't have a Phillies hat on. Jay-Z doesn't wear Phillies hats. The short, quick PR story is he's a Pennsylvania native who pioneered west and founded Denver. They call him General Larimer because he did lead the Pennsylvania militia in the 1840s or whatever. He immigrated from Scotland. He was very involved in politics back then. He was really fighting hard to abolish slavery during that era. He was fighting for women's suffrage movement. And as I was starting this brand, I'm thinking these are very, very positive things that we're still dealing with. I like this guy's character. It just kind of fit the mold for the story, and I think it ended up being a way better story than the bicycle theme I was gonna do. God, that is a good question. Have I ever tied a beer into action sports? I don't think I have.
Why?
I don't know. I can say, it was emotional for me in the beginning. I was upset, I think, that life was over, and I just didn't want to remember it. It took a little bit of time. And social media helped me because I started to reconnect with old friends, and photos would be shared and things like that. But in the very beginning, I very much disconnected. I think I remember, specifically and definitively telling people, like, do not talk about action sports. Like, that's over. This is my life. It's not to say that we wouldn't do something down the road. I like things to just kind of come off naturally, and I'm sure it will one day, but hasn't organically come together yet. So I'm definitely much more comfortable discussing and relate, or just myself personally, like saying like it's cool, like that was that chapter closed, and now this is what I do now. But in the very, very beginning of the brewing career for me, I had to very much shut that off, mostly because Saucony had already begun, and I was still in shape and skating on a regular. And I went and did a show in Madison, Wisconsin. It was like a 3-day, go skate some vert half-pipe shows, no problem. You go through show motions like the back of your hand, visit some breweries. Great trip, right? I landed, went straight to the first show, all good. Second show, it broke my hip and femur. And that was sort of that final straw that, I had a botched first surgery. They had to redo my leg again, and then everything was all messed up. And that was sort of that, I had to make that decision at that point. Am I going to continue to try to keep doing things in the action sports industry, or I've got this brewery I started, I got to either do one or the other. And so I chose that, and my way of like cutting the ties was just cut them. So yeah, I don't have any better explanation than that. I just was that was my stubborn emotional way.
Awesome, man.
So I think it's just beer time.
All right, we gotta get some beer pouring shots.
I'm pretty sure we covered everything.
We're now off to Lancaster for a spotlight on a brewery started by 2 Penn State grads. Our Town Brewery is community focused and serving some great brews. Until next time, cheers.
Rob and I met when we were like 4 or 5 years old. We grew up together and played, soccer together. Our parents coached together, things like that. We grew up in a small town in central PA called Lewisburg. And so we went to school the whole way up and graduated from high school together, and then ended up going to Penn State together. And we started in our apartment at Penn State, brewing and setting the, fermenters in the closet. Realized we had no idea how to make more than 5 gallons of beer, and it wasn't even that good at the time. We realized we wanted to go out and kind of learn the industry a little bit, so both got our first brewery job at Otto's in State College after we graduated. And that was kind of where this initially got dreamt up about a decade ago. We had no idea what really goes into, from trademarking a name to finding a space to negotiating everything. And so we started when we were 28 writing our business plan. And we're like, all right, let's just kind of get the wheels in motion. Friends and family and wives and everyone kind of sitting there saying like, are you guys going to do this or not? Because we're kind of sick of you talking about it type of thing. So it was one of those moments of like, do it or don't. And so we started, just writing a business plan, and then it just snowballed. And now, here we are. So we always wanted to create that concept of the community having a place where they can come together, and more than just serving a sandwich and a beer, but really a place that can be a kind of a community gathering. We thought the name was a great way to both instill what we wanted to be and almost keep us in check, that like you can't be called Our Town and be serving Starbucks coffee. Like we carry Passenger Coffee, which is local, and Tom's Bread and all the local products from the city. So it's something that's really important to us.
What do you have? I'll have a strawberry phosphate, Mr. Morgan.
No tie-ins to the play at all. Yeah, our freshman year in high school, our high school put on Our Town. So it's kind of funny, and I think we got a couple of messages from people that we grew up with that were like, is this from English class in 9th grade? We're like, no, nothing to do with the play. Our building's located right on the corner of Prince Street and Walnut Street, which are the two most heavily traveled streets by car in the city. We're slightly on the edge of the center of the city, but we're in kind of what feels like starts to transition into some neighborhoods, which was really important for us. We wanted to be in a place where we felt central and was walkable and that somebody would stumble into if they had no idea where they were, just visiting Lancaster, but also felt like that place that could be for someone who just is walking a block from their house and walking by with their dog, or you just wanted to feel a little less business district and slightly in the neighborhood. The exterior window trim is 95 years old. It's all original. Our ceiling is hammered out tin. It's all original as well, all the crown molding and everything. We just kind of cleaned it up. But it was a showroom floor for cars, so when we met with the structural engineers, they were really concerned about us putting all these tanks filled with liquid, and then they looked back at what this building was. They also ran their calculations and did normal engineering things, but they were like, oh, there was cars all over this. This is a showroom floor. It was an old Buick dealership, and we have pictures of the building from 95 years ago, and some of the stuff's untouched. And instead of people sitting around at tables and drinking beer and eating sandwiches, they were walking around and buying cars. So it's pretty neat to see. We tried to keep as much of the original pieces in place and bring a modern element to them. So branding for us is really important. We spent a good chunk of change on a brand package from a local marketing agency here, and they set us up with fonts, sub-fonts, colors to use, colors not to use. We have an in-house social media coordinator. Her name's Allie, and she is excellent and is a professional photographer. And there's a lot of places that make great food, great beer, but put a little less emphasis on that. And we thought we really wanted to make sure we stepped it up and we wanted to look totally pro from the outside to help draw people in to come in. I worked at Mad Chef in East Petersburg, and I think one of the biggest lessons I learned there was, and balance on a draft list is just, you can't beat it. If you have 5 New England IPAs on and still have a Pilsner, the guy who comes in and wants a light beer is still happy. And so we really try to make sure we have some nice, clean, classic styles. Like we have a Czech Pilsner that's on all day, every day. We did an Oktoberfest, totally traditional, all German malts, German hops, German yeast. Then we also like to have fun with, we have an IPA on with fresh ginger and grapefruit juice that we did with a Kvike strain of yeast and experimental hops and sour beers and, coffee and stouts. And so we like to have that balance of experimental and having fun, but also just don't forget about the beers that are the reason that we're even lucky enough to have a brewery, like Pilsners and Kolsch and Oktoberfest and things like that. So the food and the beer, we use the moniker fresh and thoughtful. The only thing that's really in our freezer right now is ice cream. Norm, our chef, does a great job of bringing in a ton of local fresh produce. It's really like a cafe. We almost call it upscale cafe. We don't have deep fryers. We don't do wings or nachos. It's sandwiches and salads, and the whole thought is to pair something with the beer as opposed to competing with the beer. We'd love people to come in here and have maybe 2 or 3 beers and something to eat and just walk out and feel like they could come back the next night instead of waddling to their car because they're like, oh man, I'm stuffed, like that Thanksgiving full. And Norm really nails that. It's flavorful, it's fresh. It's not so light that you're, looking back at the menu for something else, but it's that nice balance of satiating people without overfilling people. The scene around here has been killer. I mean, before we opened, we released a canned product that we brewed and canned at St. Boniface up in Ephrata. John charged us cost. He didn't make a penny off of us. The day we canned it, Mark from Lancaster Brewing Company sent one of his trucks up to pick it up and store at their cooler and charged us nothing. Before we opened, our keg washer had an issue and I couldn't wash kegs 2 days before opening. Springhouse lent me 35 clean halves to fill beer. And I mean, it's just, the list goes on and on of guys that have, hey, I know you're just getting started. Don't buy a pitch of yeast. I have a little California ale yeast you can have to, on and on of favors that guys in the area have done for us. Mad Chef lent us tables that are still upstairs because they have reduced seating. So we have some of their tables upstairs. They're like, hey, we don't need them and you don't have to buy them now. So, we've been super blessed and, everyone's really taking care of us. And Lancaster County's working on getting, we have now, I just started up our Lancaster County Brewers Guild. And I mean, we all really kind of take care of each other. And make sure, if someone's down on crowlers, hey, I'll slide you 200 or 300 to get through the weekend. I'm all right, I'm up, that kind of a thing. So everyone does it. It really feels so much like a community that restaurant people and coffee people, and they don't understand it because brewers are just like, what do you need? I got you. It's so different. It's one of the best things about the industry. So.